Hello and welcome to Firepower and Firepower Extensible Operating System and Chassis Manager. If you have a Cisco 4100 or 9300 FTD devices, you have to configure another operating system called FXOS or Firepower Extensible Operating System. Okay, let's jump right into the CLI. Let me show you where I plugged in on the 4150. So I just brought up a picture here. This says 4110, but it's the same thing. There's an out of band port right here, in band right here, we're just plugged in there. And from here, we can get to various different, we can get to the FTD module, and so it's a software module. One of the things, let me show you here, some of that lambda.com blog. Let me show you here, FTD 4100, 9300 CLI. One of the things I wrote up was a quick thing. It was kind of hard to figure out how to traverse this by myself. So one of the things I want to do is get to a console so then I can connect to FTD, for example, from FXOS instead of changing ports, right? So from my port, I can connect into the virtual FTD. And I exit like this, it goes to here, Firepower module, and they got the tilde there and quit. That's kind of nice. It took me a while to figure that one out. But anyways, here's the other one is to go to Lena from here. System support diagnostic CLI, enable, and then you'll see the Firepower prompt. Then we're at the Lena or the ASA code. And when to go back, Control AD, we can go to expert mode as well. I don't recommend going to expert mode. We create too many problems. I have customers that go out there and create problems. So be careful with that. All right, so let's go back here. I just want to get this up and running and then get into the GUI. So there's not much to this. There really isn't. Very little. So let me go ahead and say yes, no, password. I just need the password, IP address, default gateway, right? That's all I need. FXOS3, it's my third one. And this is going to be 172.24.03/28 and 172.24.01. That's it. Then, sure. And that's going to be 10.0.0.0 and 255.0.0.0. Probably want to make it better than that. Again, I'm just trying to get in here. Okay, no on DNS, no. Can figure all that later. There it is right there. Looks good. We'll just go ahead and say yes to this and save that config. Now what I want to show you I want to show you a couple things on here before I run over to the GUI. This just takes a second. One of the things I want to show you is how I got to that. So there was a small config on here. It was a demo unit of some sort. So let me go ahead and just log in now. And what I did is used the connect command that I showed you. So connect, and there's some different things I can do. Notice it's FXOS, local management, module 1, and then once I get into there, I can connect FTD. But I want to do local management, and then I did erase config. Now, what I'm not going to hit enter on this again because it takes 10 minutes or whatever. It depends on the system that you have, but this is going to set the whole box back to factory default. So you can go into FTD and set that to factory default. I have some blogs on that. But if you just want to come in here and say, hey, I've got this 4100, 9300, I'm just going to come in here and erase the configuration and start over. And that's how I got to where I was. Okay, so let's go ahead now out to the GUI. If I put in the right IP address, there it should be it. There, boom. I like it. Connected. So now that we're out at the GUI here, finally chassis manager, right? So we're going to go ahead and log in with what I set when we did our setup with the username and password. And we're going to get into the chassis manager here. And the first thing we'll notice is that the management port is the only one that's enabled. It's the only one that's enabled. So in this case here, you can see I have two modules. We'll take advantage of that when we get our port channels, when we want to get our port channels working here in a minute. So the first thing we want to do is go through our interfaces and then create our firepower threat defense box, logical box, okay? Because it's a virtual image that runs on top of FXOS, right? All right, so on our 4100s and 9300s, that's the way it is. So what we're doing out here is not setting IPs. We're going to say what these ports are used for. So for example, I want port 6 to be my eventing port. So I'm going to come over here to the pencil, say I want to enable port 6, and you're my firepower eventing. So I'm going to separate management from eventing pretty much for everything. We do them both on the same. But when we have a high-end box like this, the 4150, which this one, and the 9300 can send a lot of events. So we're going to separate that and put it in its own 10 gig interface. And we'll do the same thing with management on 5. Here we go, management. Okay, so now I have a 10 gig for both management and firepower eventing. Let's turn on a couple data ports now. I know these are data ports, all of them that I have in here. But in this case here, I'm going to just turn on one. This is my outside interface. I'm going to enable it, leave it as data. But what I wanted to do here is it's only a 1 gig connection. So I'm going to set that as 1 gig. Easy peasy. And the other thing, I want 1.4 is data at 10 gigs. So I'm just going to turn that on there. So once I define my ports, and we have to understand what we want before we come in here, right? So part of your design is, hey, what am I going to do, when I'm in here? What am I going to use for eventing? What am I going to use for management, if anything? But I have to at least enable my data ports. Now, the other thing I want to do is create some port channels, don't I? Some port channels. This is so my FTD boxes can talk to the switch fabric. So I'm going to say 10 data, 10 gig, that's fine. And now nicely, watch this. Here's 1, 2, and then the other card here, module. I'm going to use a port from each of those modules. Okay, and then I'm going to create a couple more port channels. And this one's going to be 20. Data's fine. And this is going to be 1, 3 and 2, 3. Definitely want my port channels from my FTD box. And 30, create one more, and then we'll go in and create our FTD box. And this one's going to be, next one is 1.7. I had to look at my notes there for a second, and 1.8. Actually, we'll leave them on the same module in this one. Okay, perfect. Okay. Looking good. So we'd come in here, we create our port channels, take a look, see what's under there. 10, 20, and 30 port channels, okay? Those are the names. So let me come under here now and create my logical device. Okay, once we're out at the logical devices, to find what we need, we're going to click Add Device. And it'll see the versions, if there is any in there, and there are, because I put some in there in the system updates. So we can see we have, this is actually the latest code as of today, right? So yours will be different by the time you're watching this possibly. But what we want to do is see the ports that we created over here. Only the ones that we activated will show up here. Here they are right here, right? We can see the port channels. So we can see the data ports, the port channels. So what I want to do, so we're going to click down here. We'll see our FTD as we configure it. Now we're going to click to configure. Now I've got to choose which management and event interface I'm going to use, but I've only configured one of each, so only one will show up here. Okay, and the management IP again, we're going to put in here. And /28 mask. Okay, and then we'll go to settings and put in the registration key. This is going to be my key that when I go to my FMC that I use, right? The one-time use key. And then the password for the admin. This is where you set it. It's basically reconfirming it. And the firepower management 172.24.010. And the rest of these I can leave alone, except I choose route and transparent here. DNS, fully qualified names, I want to put those in, and I will. I'll put all this in. But this is where I choose the eventing interface. There's only going to be one. So notice that when I create them and they're over here, now I can use them. They're not used just because I create them. I have to tell it. Now I have to sign the agreement. And had I gone through there, notice when I'm seeing my device here, it's telling me my management interface. The eventing interface shows up down here. The venting interface shows up down here. All right, and we'll see our ports. Now we need some data ports. So I'm just going to click on these, right? And these are my data ports, whatever I want to use. I also want my port channels. All right, so whichever one, so my port channels should come on. Actually, I think I want to take these off. Yep. And because these were in my port channels, right? 1.4 wasn't. I want 1.1, 1.4. And then my port channel 20 and 30. Now we'll see them there. Okay, 10, 20, 30. And I don't need 2.8. There we go. So I got 1.1, 1.4. Those were my data ports. The rest of my use are my port channels. Okay, so there we go. And we can see it all down here. And looking good, looking good. So this will actually save that configuration. So if I was to take it out of the FMC and put it back in, this is what would be used. So notice I have my keys and so on. And again, you obviously want to fill in all this other stuff. But I think this looks great. We're good to go. I can bring it into the FMC now. Finish configuring that part. A couple other things I want to say. System config here. This is just import and export. This is where I put my token in now. The token that you get from your CCO for your licensing has to go in here as well. The hardware is licensed. So you can use the same token as you do in your FMC for this box, but you also have to license the FXOS. Under updates, you can see it's pretty easy to do updates now. Before we had to put in the bootstrap and all this other stuff separately. Now they're bundles, right? So you install them, just click on them, and you can just bring the latest ones in and then verify them and they'll auto install. It's pretty simple now. User management, what we're going to do here is basically create our users. For external settings, we'd go under settings and set up authentication, radius, LDAP, TACACS, and so on. And under tools, we got packet capture and then just admin and help is login. Very cool stuff. FXOX, it just takes a little getting used to, but it's not that hard. But wait, before I go, I want to click one more thing, and that's platform settings up here, a lot like we did for our FTD box. Notice this is where we're going to have our NTP server, because I don't know if you go through platform settings on the FMC and push that out to FTD, it says, hey, if you have 4100, 9300, you got to set it on the FXOS, and here it is right here. So we can set our SSH, HTTPS, access list on who can get into the FXOS and so on. Very cool stuff. All right, have fun. Hopefully you guys can get into and play with an FXOS and chassis manager. It just takes a little getting used to, and then it's really not that hard, but it just, you have to play with it for a little bit for sure.